After hosting Christmas, I found my emergency cash missing. My dad calmly said, "We gave it to your sister. She's starting a family." That night, I called my lawyer. By morning, a few emails later, my sister called, panicking. I simply told her, "Check your inbox." Christmas was supposed to be this quiet, cozy affair at my place for a change. It wasn't about showing off. I just hoped that maybe, if I provided enough warmth, they'd remember how to appreciate it. So I cooked, cleaned, and bought presents for nieces and nephews who could hardly recall my name. My dad sat at the table's head, looking like a statue in his corduroy, while my sister floated around, snapping photos for social media. As for my mom, she kept busy whispering behind folded napkins, too preoccupied to ask how I was doing. No one thanked me, not for the food, the house, or even letting them stay longer when their plumbing went haywire. I just smiled and let it slide, hoping that by not making it about me, they'd notice me anyway. But they didn't. It wasn't until everyone had left, with the last of the pine needles swept up and wine glasses neatly in the dishwasher, that I went to check the safe. It was just a habit, not because I was worried, but when I opened it, the emergency cash, $14,000, was gone. This wasn't retirement or investment funds, just a safety net, the type of money you keep in case the world forgets you, and it had. I didn't panic or shout, just stood there staring at the emptiness, half expecting an apology. That's when Dad walked in, drying his hands on a dish towel like he owned the place. "We gave it to your sister," he said nonchalantly. "She's starting a family." My hands went cold. Not a request, not an emergency, not even a heads up. They just opened my safe, took my cash, and didn't even think I deserved to know. I quietly walked to the hallway, sat on the bench by the coat rack, and pulled out my phone. One call to my lawyer, who answered on the second ring. "Evening?" he said, sensing something was off. I told him what happened. He paused, then promised, "I'll start the paper trail tonight." I nodded, hung up, and the next hour blurred with emails, account checks, quiet, calculated actions. No drama, not yet. Later, my sister called, her voice sharp and frantic. "What did you do?" she demanded. I didn't raise my voice or sigh. "You might want to check your inbox," I said, then hung up. More texts came through, turning defensive. "You're blowing this out of proportion," she claimed, as if emergency funds materialize from thin air and safes open themselves. I sat there, my coffee cold, laptop screen quietly glowing, watching email threads grow. I wasn't replying yet, just reflecting. Not just on this breach, but all of them. The empty safe wasn't a betrayal. It confirmed a pattern that was impossible to ignore. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. A week before her wedding, my card got charged $9,800. "You don't have a spouse or kids," she said. "Might as well be useful." The bridesmaids laughed, she smirked, and I replied, "Then I hope you find me useless real soon." They took the cash like it was air, and when I canceled everything, they branded me vindictive. I'd covered their mortgage once, just a temporary bridge, they said, until I saw them buying patio furniture. I paid off her car in 2021, and she posted a selfie the same day, boasting nothing feels better than financial independence, without even tagging me. Every time I gave, the acknowledgement vanished. Every time I stayed silent, they spun a tale of self-made success. I recalled Mom's voice when I offered to co-sign their refinance. "You're the only one we can count on," she said, as if complimenting me, but it felt more like a life sentence. And now this, the safe's theft, was the final footnote. I wasn't a son. I was just expected to support, not be seen. Every flashback was a revelation. Christmas Eve, my seat given to a neighbor. "You'll be fine in the kitchen." Anniversary dinners for those who mattered. Backyard remodel costs erased with a "don't be dramatic" text. My sister's RSVP cards bore my return address, her wedding charged to my credit line. Dad's voicemail suggesting I skip family events. Maybe it's better if you don't come anymore. These weren't isolated incidents. They were data points in a system I ran while they cashed in the dividends. The terrifying part? They weren't even hiding it anymore. They'd grown so comfortable using me, they stopped pretending I was part of the family. Yet some tiny part of me wished they'd realize before it was too late. I didn't expect apologies, just a pause, a sign they knew they'd crossed a line. But no one blinked. Not her, not him, not anyone. So I made up my mind. No more flashbacks, no more patterns, no more polite sabotage. I was done being useful. I wasn't going to argue. I was going to move on. So there I was, letting them deal with all those gaps they never even realized existed until that night after my sister rang me up. I didn't argue, didn't waste time explaining myself, and didn't even try to take back what was snatched away. Instead, I just focused on reclaiming myself. You see, the emails I shot off after hanging up weren't just spur-of-the-moment thoughts. They were actually part of a plan I'd been crafting in my mind for years, without even knowing it. The first email was to my lawyer, telling them to get the formal disassociation papers ready. Take my name off all those shared accounts and kick off an asset protection review. Next up was my financial advisor, who I instructed to shift all my liquid assets into a secure trust, making sure to exclude anyone from my immediate family. Then it was my accountant's turn. Ask them to audit any family-linked payments from the past 5 years, flag anything unauthorized, and get the paperwork ready. This wasn't about getting back at anyone. It was about taking control of my infrastructure. By midnight, I was logged into the back end of that little IT company I'd painstakingly built from scratch. This was the same company that ran everything for my parents, from their home security systems to cloud backups, mobile plans, and even the software licenses for their accounting firm. Everything under my business umbrella, all free, and yet completely unnoticed. First thing I did was turn off their cloud cameras, then the automated locks, and even the smart thermostat they love to show off at our family dinners. I fiddled around with the DNS settings, cutting off any remote control of their home network. No more free Wi-Fi for them or free tech support when their printer decided to go on strike. Then, I turned my attention to our shared family phone plan. I didn't cancel it, but I did transfer ownership of all the lines to them. If they didn't accept within 72 hours, the service would get cut off, and they'd be left with the bill. No more free calls, no more footing the family's communication bills. Oh, and the streaming services? Yeah, I backed out of footing that too, leaving them to fend for themselves. It might seem like a small thing, but boy, would it sting. By the time morning rolled around, the texts started pouring in. My sister was asking why the security cameras were offline and why she couldn't log in. My dad was complaining that the mortgage company had called, and my mom was in disbelief, asking if I was serious. I didn't bother replying. They weren't really asking. They were demanding things go back online. But here's the deal. The system was more or less me, and I was logging out. By noon, they were calling me, but I let it ring until the voicemail icon popped up. My dad's message was kind of predictable, all about resolving things calmly and talking like adults. That made me laugh. He always looped back to that phrase, even though he stood by while I was sidelined and erased from the picture. That evening, my sister hit me up again saying Netflix wasn't working and asking me to fix it. I simply replied, "You said you didn't need me." No emojis, nothing, just the truth. But I wasn't finished. I logged back into their accounting firm's IT system. They had no clue I still had admin access. They thought I'd set it all up years ago as a favor and then just let it go. Little did they know I'd been discreetly maintaining their firewall protections, software updates, and backups through my company. They didn't realize the domain was actually registered to me, so I deactivated the software license and sent a notice via their admin dashboard saying that the free maintenance was over and they'd need a new IT provider. Then I logged out. Half an hour later, my voicemail was full again. By morning, my uncle's clinic, which was also running on my company's old infrastructure, called my personal line in a panic. Their system was down, and they couldn't access patient records or billing software. Everything that kept their business running had been supported by me all along. I didn't sabotage anything. I just withdrew my support, and the whole digital house of cards crumbled because they never built their own. My cousin Ellie messaged me in the afternoon, asking if I return. Ellie pulled everything. I replied that I just pulled myself out, and the rest toppled over naturally. She didn't ask anything else but decided to call. And for the first time in a year, we actually talked. She confirmed what I already suspected. My parents were trying to twist the story, claiming I'd gone rogue, that I was mentally unstable or jealous. Classic stuff. But this time, Ellie didn't buy it. She wasn't alone either. I decided to send copies of the documentation to the family members who mattered. It wasn't out of spite, but more out of accuracy. I didn't add any commentary, just sent the audit logs, payment records, and screenshots showing my name on the system architecture. I included a simple note saying, "I just want you to know the truth. No response necessary." That night, my dad texted again, saying I'd made my point and asking me to stop. But it wasn't about making a point, it was about breaking the cycle. I revoked their access to the family storage unit, the one I'd quietly paid for over the past 3 years, that housed my dad's vintage tools and all the holiday decorations they loved to show off. Lease canceled, locks changed. I called the mortgage company next and removed myself as a co-signer on their refinance. The representative on the call asked cautiously if I understood this might provoke a foreclosure review. I understood perfectly and confirmed the removal. 3 hours later, my mom texted saying the mortgage company called and told me to fix it, always with the word fix. I didn't respond. Instead, I moved all remaining funds in the shared emergency account to a new. I had everything locked up in total trust, protected and accessible only by me. Then the messages from my family started pouring in, growing more and more frantic. My sister was saying I was freaking out unnecessarily, while my mom reminded me that family is the only thing that matters. I stared at that last message for a while before I finally replied. I told them I used to have a family, but I'm no longer a part of it. With a decisive move, I switched off my phone. The next day, I reached out to my lawyer to kick off the process of legally severing ties from their business ventures, wanting to make sure I wasn't left with even a hint of liability. I needed nothing that could pull me back into their crumbling setup. My lawyer, always thorough and cautious, asked if I intended to send them a formal notice of my decision to cut ties. I told him no. I wanted them to feel the silence, to experience what it's like when the support they relied on suddenly vanishes. Calls would go unanswered, passwords wouldn't work, and their safety net would disappear. This time, I felt no guilt for walking away, for letting the construct crumble, and for stepping out from under the burden they had saddled me with. It wasn't a loss of a son for them, but a loss of the system they depended on, and I wasn't going to rebuild it for them. The next morning, my phone buzzed non-stop. Not just a few, but hundreds of calls, texts, and voicemails piled up from the people I once called family. They were in full panic mode, and each message stung like a sharp jab. My mom's frantic message, in all caps, without a single punctuation mark, asked what I had done, saying they were suffering and pleading for me to fix it before things got worse. Dad's voicemail was a rant, branding me as ungrateful after all he supposedly did for me. He hoped my actions were worth it, and he wasn't shy about letting me hear that on repeat. My sister even sent a group text to our relatives, labeling me as irrational and warning them not to trust me. It was marked urgent with 12 checks, signaling a crying plea for someone, anyone, to intervene. But shouting doesn't break silence, and I had mastered that art. That morning, I saw the familiar pattern unfold. My sister threatened to go public with private information if I didn't change my stance. Their lawyers started firing off legal threats, demanding a return to the old ways and retracting transferred trusts. Emotional appeals flooded in, saying my nieces were scared and they needed their home back. All of it predictable and systematic, stemming from one core issue: fear. Fear of owning up to their actions. Fear of losing what they had come to take for granted. I didn't engage or argue, I just watched. An hour later, my lawyer forwarded me a cease and desist from my sister's attorney, demanding I stop disrupting services or else. My lawyer's note was calm. Let's see if they follow through. My actions, he reassured me, were legal, documented, and justified. I sat back, heart steady, knowing the storm had just begun, but storms eventually run out of thunder. By the afternoon, the family was rallying their allies. Uncle Chris and their banker friend reached out, warning me about the potential bankruptcy from legal fees, urging me to reconsider. Aja posted about family values on Facebook, implying I was being toxic and immature. They were nervous and trying to paint themselves as victims, but I had already prepared for this. I secured all audit logs and transcripts in a private legal Dropbox, ready for any discovery that might follow. Every transaction, account review, and email thread was logged, time-stamped, and could be easily accessed by a lawyer or neutral party. Then the rumor mill kicked in. Family acquaintances began calling, looking for details, while friends informed me they had seen forwarded versions of our group chats. My world expanded into their gossip. That evening, I saw things reach a boiling point. My mom's lawyer emailed demanding an injunction, listing emergency compliance needs and monetary damages. Dad sent a tightly worded letter, claiming emotional distress and reputational harm, casting all the blame on me. Their narrative was wrapped in a facade of love, claiming they only acted for my benefit, never intending harm. Classic spin. Their pressure mounted, but it was all absurd. They had breached my privacy, taken my money, cut me off, and still blamed me for turning away. I simply forwarded everything to my lawyer, replying that the matter was under review, and my next steps would be guided by legal counsel. Until then, I stood firm on my decision. The old structure was down, and the trust had vanished. No need for a signature or a softened tone. There was no room left for warmth. Later that night, my sister texted again, accusing me of stooping to legal measures if I really cared about the family. She demanded I just give back. I paused before typing, "I gave everything. You took it twice." Then I hit send, welcoming the silence. Not the oppressive silence filled with tension, but an echoing void where a connection once existed. Their voices were fading, their systems offline, and their defenses were starting to crack. They understood I wasn't playing by the old rules anymore, the ones they had written without a thought for my input. Christmas lights lay dark and unplugged in the basement, cameras offline, and shared drives out of reach. Checking my phone, there were no calls, no texts, no pleas left unanswered. Because at the heart of this storm wasn't anger, it was consequence. They had crafted a system, and I had dismantled it, leaving them to face the fallout, clueless about how to start over without me. You know, it was kind of surprising when they all showed up at my doorstep. It felt almost like they were trying to declare a truce or something. There they were, the three of them, my mom, dad, and sister, just standing on the porch. They looked so somber, like they were dressed for a funeral or something. Not at all like they were gearing up for a fight, nor did they look like they came to apologize. They seemed all polished and practiced. Maya answered the door. She didn't tell them to come in or anything, just said, "You can stand there." I stayed seated, and I could already hear my mom's voice starting to crack, even before she began talking. "We didn't come to fight," she said. "We just want to talk." Maya moved aside a bit, letting their words linger in the air, kind of like the smoke from a fire that's already done burning down the house. Finally, I looked up and decided to stand. My dad spoke first. "You look tired, son." I didn't even bother to respond. Then Mom took over, her voice all rehearsed but trembling at the same time. She went on about how they made mistakes and it wasn't supposed to reach this point. "You cut everything off," she said. "You didn't have to make it so final." That's when she dropped what I knew was their big line. "We need you." Not "we miss you" or "we're sorry," just "need," like I was nothing more than a tool or a quick fix. I moved a step forward, with Maya still right by my side, and said, "You don't need me. You need what I gave you, and that's gone." Dad's tone shifted, got a little sharper. "This family falls apart without you." I just replied, "That's not a family. That's a business model." My sister was getting mad now, stepping up, saying, "So you're just going to throw everything away over what, one bad night?" I couldn't help but laugh, short and cold. "This wasn't about one night. This is about 2 decades. You treated me like a backup, like infrastructure, like a fuse you thought you could always reset. But now the power's cut." Mom's voice cracked again, this time into genuine tears. "We didn't mean to hurt you. We were overwhelmed. We didn't know how much you did." I just stared at her, feeling that line, "we didn't know," hit like a slap in the face. You didn't ask because you didn't care. Everything worked, so that was enough for you. Dad tried once more, this time softer. "You're our son. We raised you. You owe us some humanity." "No," I said, "you raised me to think I owed you everything. You used it all up. It's gone now." There was this heavy silence, and the wind started picking up, cold and sharp like the truth. I took a step closer so they'd hear me loud and clear. "I didn't walk away because of money. I left because you never really saw me. Just what I could provide." I turned to my sister. "You didn't just lose the perks. You lost my connection." Then I faced all of them. "You weren't cruel. You just couldn't see me. And I'm done paying the price for that." Maya slowly closed the door behind them. They didn't knock again. I stood there in the silence, and for once it didn't feel empty. It felt clean, clear, and genuinely final. They didn't cry when they left. They didn't beg. They just stood there, stunned, because they finally understood the one thing they never anticipated: that I could leave, that I wouldn't come back, and that I meant it.